Alright. Sun's in my face, so deal with it. So this one, calling back to that last one, I guess this is a 3-part series or something. About kind of character creation and stuff like that. How the last one was talking about how, like, the value of, like, pre-written questions and pointed questions and suggestions that certain source materials and rule books have for making a character, and how I kind of prefer to not have as much as that. I like having a few things just to get the character started if I don't have anything, but I like to find my character, like kind of improvise, not just playing the character, but improvise the character themselves. Like have a framework and somewhere to start from, but just like find out who the character is. And I think I said that in the last one, but like in particular for this character I'm playing in Ugliest Man Alive, Raskus. He's the Silver Dragonborn samurai fighter. His main characterization, I kind of intended him as like almost a Captain America-y type of character, like really trustworthy, really strong integrity, really strong morals, kind of guy most people like, that kind of character. He's always polite, but he's also a samurai in a few different ways. Both, that's his subclass, and he's from his hometown. His home city is like a Japanese-y kind of city-state, sovereign city-state in this world, and his family is a long-time military, like royal knight family. Every head of the family for generations back has been part of the Royal Knights, until his grandfather did some shit and got their family name tarnished. And while the grandfather was banished, the father and Raskus, who was not born yet at this time, were disallowed. Banned? That's the proper word. Disallowed from military service in the city-state and in the Royal Knights from that point forward. And even so, Raskus was still trained by his father for the knighthood, to be a royal knight. So now Raskus is a young adult with all this military training and no idea what the fuck to do with it. Like, for a while, he didn't even know that he wouldn't be allowed to join the knighthood. It was something his family just didn't talk about. And, I guess his father was kind of a proud character, didn't want to talk about their shame, but that's part of it. I just made that up, like, just because that's something that kind of needs an explanation when you start thinking about it. So I was like, okay, what would be the explanation there? So you just come up with it. But originally I intended this character to be a fusion of like Captain America, a little bit of Superman thrown in there, personality-wise. He's not going to fly around and shoot lasers. But just personality of like Captain America, a little Superman thrown in. And then I was also thinking about Raiden from Metal Gear Rising, particularly that version. I mean, it's all the same. Definitely not going to use the whole Jack the Ripper persona and all that part of Raiden's character arcs, but more just the growth from Raiden seeing his weapons as tools of justice, and he's somehow better and above all that, and everything he does is noble automatically. Just got a text from the chat about lizards. Yeah, that, he's somehow, the way he uses his sword is somehow better. The way he's a mercenary is somehow more noble than other people. And part of his character arc is figuring out that that's not really true. he's just a mercenary like everybody else. While he has his own ideals, and he's pretty sure his ideals are right, and he's on the right side of history, you could say. When it comes down to it, he's still just another man with a sword and ideals. And in war, a lot of the time, it just comes down to who wins. It doesn't necessarily come down to who has the better ideology. It comes down to who fucking wins the war. History is written by the victors and all that. But as I started playing Raskus, I figured out Raskus kind of has a little bit more in common with Raiden's like main foil in that game, Jetstream Sam, who was raised in a military kind of samurai family. I mean, it's the 21st century, and he's still raised as a samurai for some reason. But, he grew up learning Bushido and Bushido, is that racist? He grew up learning swordplay, particularly katana. I think specifically like a Brazilian Japanese fusion style. I don't remember. They had a name for it in the game. I don't remember what it was. Like Rodrigo. He's Samuel Rodriguez, and it's like Rodrigo Do, some sort of fucking bullshit made up nonsense. Which actually, I think I watched a video about that character, and there's actually something true there. But anyway, I'm not a historian, so. So this character, Jetstream Sam, is brought up as a swordsman, and he starts to use that, and he falls into like the criminal underworld. And he's renowned for his skill there, and then as the war economy and warfare grows and changes, and all these cybernetics and nanomachines and bullshit comes in, he starts fighting with, whereas everyone else is getting like, what do you call it? Replacement cyborg bodies, like all sorts of crazy cybernetic musculature and stuff. He just wears a suit, like a cybernetic suit that does the same thing, not quite as well, because he doesn't want to lose his real body. But he grows up, and then he falls into this underworld, and he just fights and fights, and he never really finds his ideals. And it's in his theme song. The only thing he knows how to do is fight. He doesn't have a reason really to do it. He just fights. And then especially where you see in the DLC, Sam tries to take out Armstrong in the Winds of Destruction, the main antagonistic force in the game, but Sam ends up losing, because even though he finds like the single weakness in Armstrong's nanomachines, and he manages to cut off Armstrong's arm, Armstrong still beats him anyway. Like, Armstrong's nanomachines harden his body, and then, like, but it has to refresh for some reason, like when he switches arms or something. Like, I forget the exact thing, but he refreshes and his arm turns normal for a split second, and Sam catches that and cuts off his arm. And then Armstrong, without missing a beat, the finely sliced arm nub, Armstrong hardens it, and it's as sharp as a blade, and he just cuts off Sam's entire arm. And even like with Sam's extreme skill, he couldn't beat Armstrong, so he just like loses all of his ideals right there. And all he knows how to do is fight whoever and whatever Armstrong points him at. So he loses himself right there. And I'm kind of feeling like Raskus is going to have more and more in common with Sam as time goes on. Like, he has all these skills, but he doesn't know what to do with them. Like, he doesn't have a real goal here. And there'll be a lot of different threads that for me to pull on there, like the whole weapons as a tool of justice thing. They're not. A sword is not something you protect someone with. A sword can only do harm. It is a terrible burden. There's that thread to pull on, which I always really like. There's the other one. Fuck. Yeah. What is Raskus's purpose here? Like, what? He has all this military training, and what is he going to do with it? Like, maybe, like, he'll probably achieve his ultimate goal of, like, becoming a hero and making a name for himself and reclaiming his grandfather's sword. But then maybe he'll return to Radranum, his hometown, his home city, and then just kind of not become a knight and go do something else. Who knows? I'll find out when I get there. and that's kind of the whole point. We both, like, you start, at least from my perspective, that's kind of the whole point. You start with a framework and you come up with a character that you'll like to play. But then you play and you find out who that character is. And it's taken me a few characters to kind of get that. Like, there's this other character I'd love to play in the future at some point. Senlir, who would be probably a barbarian. I'm kind of torn between barbarian and conquest paladin for the whole fear angle. But he would be an executioner or vulture of, like, the god of fate. And his whole purpose, he was, like, born and bred for this specific purpose by some cult-like order of the god of fate and death. Like, in certain settings it would be the Raven Queen, in other settings it would be something else. Depends on the setting I play in it. But his whole point would be to go around and trim, like, rotten threads of fate or frayed threads of fate, like whatever the lore would end up being. Like, he just goes around, and individuals that would have a damaging effect on fate or something along those lines, or individuals that are supposed to have great effects on the future and shape the course of history, but maybe some twist of, like, rotten threads and frayed threads makes them vulnerable and they could die and be taken out of history early, which would be damaging and degenerate to history going forward. Senlir's entire purpose is to go around culling or protecting those individuals. And either, who knows what the whole, what starts that whole effect. Like, either it could be some god of chaos is affecting fate and allowing these things to happen, or maybe the god of fate is weakening somehow, and their ability to affect and keep control of fate is weakening. And that both having this Senlir, this type of vulture of fate, is both helping clean up this god's mess and is a form of worship at the same time, to both clean up the god's mess and strengthen them at the same time. So that both of those things both directly affect that god's strength. And who knows exactly where that character would go and what they would end up. Hopefully I would play them in a party where the other characters are a bit more, I'm going to use the term on the ball, because, like, that character I don't think would work very well in the current Ugliest Man Alive campaign, where that's the one where I'm playing Raskus. It's Raskus, Mildred, the chaotic immortal, maybe, goblin, and Wetclaw, this super cool Kenku rogue, who's, I guess that's kind of a stereotype, like a Kenku rogue with a crossbow, but he's like a Kenku are like looked down upon in this setting. I guess that they are in a lot of settings, but in this setting in particular, Kenku are kind of looked down upon in cities, and Wetclaw kind of plays off of that and seems to be a stand-up kind of character that has been dealt a bad hand. But we'll see. We'll see exactly who this character is, because his player Lauren, she plays this character pretty close to the chest. So Raskris sort of takes up the role of the party leader in a way, because he's the most willing to speak up, and he's the most level-headed at the same time. So, because Mildred would be a terrible leader. I don't know what the fuck. But Senlir, I don't think would work super well in that, because Senlir probably would not have a very level head. But anyway, that's some more thoughts on character creation and playing characters. Blah, blah, blah. Less sun in my face.